Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Every Horror Movie on Netflix. It's the podcast where we watch, review, and discuss every horror movie on Netflix. I'm Patrick, and I'm back this episode with my friends, as always, Chris.
Hello.
And Steven.
Hi.
And a hearty oh to you as well.
Good to see you guys.
Well, we are here today to review the 1994 Seven classic. I think it's a contemporary classic, one might even say. I Know What You Did Last Summer. But before we get into that, before we start figuring out what exactly we did last summer, because I frankly can't even remember, we're going to do our little horror.
I'm sorry not to interrupt, but I had the same thought. I was like, if someone was leaving me notes saying they know what I did last summer, I'd be like, well, fuck, thank God one of us does.
Yeah.
I'd be terrified. I mean, I may or may not have committed some potential crimes last summer. I'd be like, who is this? Who's texting me right now?
Yeah, I mean, I would be grateful even if somebody just left me a note and said they know what I did yesterday, because that is also a struggle at this point. So, I mean, really, this is more a fantasy than a horror film. It's horror fantasy.
I think like once a year, maybe every app on your phone could give you like a recap of what you did that year.
Oh, so, yeah, like you're Wrapped, like Spotify Wrapped, except for your actual whole life.
Yeah, for Grubhub, for everything.
I mean, my iPhone does that if I go into photos, but it's just pictures of all my dead pets.
Oh, no.
Yikes. Well, let's all try and struggle to use our memories without the aid of any apps on our phone to remember what we've watched or read or consumed in the horror world for the past 2 weeks. I know for myself, the answer is nothing. I got nothing to share this week. I have been watching Watchmen. I've been rewatching the Watchmen series. I've been watching fucking Pirates of the Caribbean movies for some goddamn reason. I've been watching...
Oh, God.
And I've been watching Chris's Lord of the Rings extended editions, which has been fine. But
Didn't we just do that like 4 years ago?
That's a lot. You're like, I haven't been watching much, and then you just list off like 60
nothing
hours
horror.
But none of it's horror.
Oh, okay.
Nothing horror. Yeah.
I'd love to make the argument that Watchmen is horror in places, but it's really not.
It is
Good
horror.
show, though. Everyone should see it.
Watching the extended editions is a little bit horror, too. Not as horror as the day that we all watched them, all three of them in the same day. That was true horror. But I don't know. They're too fucking long, man. They just give me the regulars. 3 hours.
But then you
enough.
don't get the Mouth of Sauron.
Okay, that's the one added bonus, which, speaking of horror, excellent shit. Love the Mouth of Sauron.
I only watched the extendeds because I need the scene in the Two Towers where Aragorn calms down the horse.
Yeah, that's pretty.
That's the only. That's my. I don't like the Two Towers extended otherwise, because you have to listen to like the trees do like a 2-hour set of poetry and music. But when he calms down the horse, that's pretty good.
It's kind of like the second act of Avatar: The Way of Water, except with trees.
Oh yeah, he went and saw the movie just so he could diss the greatest film of the year on our show.
I didn't actually, although speaking of horror, that was also that's survival horror. Watching Avatar: The Way of Water is survival horror, so I think that also counts. Actually, so I've been doing a lot of horror. What about you guys?
I mean, watching the fucking Pirates of the Caribbean sounds like
yeah, true.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
What is wrong with you?
Perverse curiosity.
I watched The Thing. I watched one thing that I'm kind of amazed I had never heard of, because it has an insane pedigree. So one of my project managers at work, we meet bi-weekly. He knows that I do this podcast. Hope to God he never listens to it. I haven't told him what it's called. But he decided that we should do a horror catch-up at the end of our bi-weekly meeting. So I told him to check out...
you haven't told him what it's called. You just told him you watch every horror movie on Netflix.
Try Googling that, motherfucker. Yeah, anyway, so I told him to watch Severance on Apple, which is horror adjacent and also very germane to some of the topics we were discussing in our meeting. And he told me to watch 1989's Intruder, which is a slasher set in a grocery store. I had a blast with it, but here's what's crazy about this movie. It stars Sam Raimi, Ted Raimi, Bruce Campbell has a cameo. Greg Nicotero did the special effects. It was set and shot in a supermarket in West Bloomfield. And I'd somehow never heard of this movie. I mean, I grew up idolizing Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell, and it was a fucking blast. I'd forgotten that Greg Nicotero did the effects until there was a particularly gruesome scene with a table saw that kind of blew my mind. And I'm not a big gore hound, but it was so impressive how he pulled it off that I kind of shrieked with glee. Art the Clown would have been proud. So check that out. It's on Tubi. Intruder, 1989. Good little flick, and I think it even has a little something to say about capitalism too. Like it's not just pure trash.
Interesting.
Chris, you got anything?
Yeah. Well, first and most importantly, I rewatched Todd McFarlane, Like Hell I Won't.
Oh yeah,
like hell you did.
The 45-minute YouTube documentary, really like a hagiography of Todd McFarlane's life.
What prompted this?
Well, I saw like some video of Todd McFarlane on like Twitter or Instagram or something. And I was actually texting you about it. I was like, was Todd McFarlane, is this how he usually is? Or did he have a stroke or something? And you were like, no, this is how he usually is. And I had remembered him being a little bit more of a commanding figure and physically and voice wise, he's not, and he's not what I remembered, but I just remembered his presence in that documentary. And yeah, what can you say? He's a badass.
Now I want to rewatch that.
Yeah.
I recall having a delightful time watching that the first time.
Yeah, go watch that on YouTube. Memorable. My favorite line in the movie. Well, I mean, the one we all remember is the one where he talks about when he took over Spider-Man, and until then the emphasis had been Spider-Man, and he said he wanted to do Spider-Man.
Hell yeah.
But then he also there's a quote from him where he's like, sometimes I start corporations out of anger. So Todd McFarlane, great guy. Still waiting for Spawn 2. Hopefully it's coming out soon.
Our capitalist king.
Yeah. And then I watched Wednesday on Netflix in its entirety while I was building things with Legos. I had it on, I was sort of half watching it, which is about the appropriate level of engagement, I think, for me. I don't think it would have held my attention if I had commit to just sitting down and watching it. But I thought it was pretty cute and pretty fun and pretty good. Pretty good indeed.
I'm out of ignorance. I have to ask a question. Okay, so it's a Tim Burton series. Did he actually direct any of it?
He
directed the first episode.
He directed, I would say, at least 4 episodes of like the 8
How's
or 9
his
episodes.
direction looking? Could you tell? Did it have the Burton stamp aside from the production design?
I would say it was decently directed. Like you could tell there was a director who knew what he was doing, but I wouldn't say it was especially stylistically up to snuff. It seems very sort of made slapdash. There's a lot of green screen work. I think that like even scenes that took place in like a therapist's office and like a normal house, I suspect were all done on green screen, and you can kind of tell. You can sort of see the fringe around people's hair and stuff. So it's like they really just kind of, I don't know, what can you say? They did so much of this shit on green screen. They do have some real sets though, but the production's not very good. But it's cute. Jenna Ortega as Wednesday does a great job. It's very well cast. All the you don't see them a lot because the premise is Wednesday's gone to boarding school. But Luis Guzman and Catherine Zeta-Jones are fantastic as and perfectly cast as Morticia and Gomez, and Pugsley is kind of sidelined, and they could have done a better job casting Lurch. Oh, and Uncle Fester shows up. Spoiler alert! And that was
Fred Armisen.
Which
is kind of inspired casting, but I could see it being annoying.
I didn't like it. I warmed up to it by the end of that episode, but I didn't like that at all. I wanted like Larry David.
Who plays Lurch? Anybody noteworthy?
I don't think it's a name actor. Yeah. Okay. But it's fun, it's fun. It's cute. What can you say?
I liked Armisen. I didn't like, and I love Catherine Zeta-Jones in general. I love Luis Guzman in general, but for some reason they didn't really click for me as Morticia and Gomez. I don't know if it's just like Angelica Houston and fucking, what's his name?
Raul Julia.
Yeah. From the 90s movies were just so wonderful and iconic. So they're a little irreplaceable. But when you have a take as iconic as Christina Ricci's on Wednesdays, and then Jenna Ortega shows up and fucking just destroys. Like, props to her for what she did. I did, when you said the thing about losing your attention, if you had actually been like paying attention to it and not just doing Legos, it definitely did lose my attention over time. Like the mystery, especially the twists and turns of the mystery, I got very bogged down in and just disinterested in as well at a certain point. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun casting in characters.
Yeah, and that would be kind of my main criticism of the series, because it's a mystery. She's trying to solve some murders, some of which have been, like, it starts off with her like trying to clear her name, sort of like she's been sort of involved in these murders, kind of like a framing, but like she's just trying to solve this murder mystery, and I don't really understand why she cares or what's driving her. There's really not any look into who she is as a character, except she's just like the kind of contrarian edgelord, I'm gonna be happy when it rains girl. So that was that's a weakness of the series. And also, spoiler alert, mild spoiler alert, at the end of the series, in the last episode, she gets an iPhone, and I'm not happy about that. Someone gives her an iPhone and is like, you need this, and welcome to the 21st century. And I think the writers just realized by the time they got to the finale that they didn't want to do another season writing around Wednesday having a phone where she has to trek across town to talk to characters. So
this from the man who loved the survivors getting away in a self-driving electric vehicle at the end of the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh yeah, that was different. That's different. You can do fish out of water stuff like that with a character, but I thought it goes against the essence of her character too much. I can't imagine her doing her shtick on a text message. So
we'll find out. There's another season coming.
We'll find out. I'm gonna have to buy another Lego set.
Are there Wednesday Legos? Oh, you mean so that you can watch the second season? I understand. There will be Wednesday Legos at some point, though. I'm sure. Anyways, now that we all know what we did last 2 weeks, let's talk about I Know What You Did Last Summer. A slasher film. I mean, come on, you've probably seen this before, right? If you're listening, you've probably seen this before.
If you're listening to a horror podcast, you've seen this movie. Well, and if you haven't, well,
I had not, but I'm sure I'm an outlier. I would guess mostly everybody's seen this fucking thing.
But I saw it recently. I would say I saw it in the last 5 or 6 years, and I only watched it. I rented it because I was trying to. I think I was doing like some research basically for Pizza Face Killer when I was thinking of writing Pizza Face Killer. I was like, I want to watch some more like archetypal slashers. And this is one that I remember having a large stature when I was growing up, but I'd never seen. You know, because this was right on the heels of Scream. This was like when I was in probably 5th grade, 6th grade, 4th grade, something like that. It's like, this was the movie. I Know What You Did Last Summer. The Fisherman. It sounds very scary.
Yeah. I saw it on VHS whenever the VHS came out. So yeah, it would have been 5th or 6th grade. It was not my choice. I was at a sleepover and like the kids' parents, you know, let them watch whatever the fuck they wanted to. Otherwise, I don't think I would have seen it. But,
how did it fare as a sleepover movie?
It was really fun. I was not scared. I was the one who was, as I am in like a haunted house attraction or whatever, I was the one kind of like anytime people were scared, I was cracking a joke or something. Mm-hmm. But it was a blast. Yeah, like everyone had like very vocal reactions to it, especially when you're that young watching this kind of thing, which is fairly bloody, though not as much as I remembered.
That's why I was asking, because as far as...
A couple kids were afraid to sleep with the lights out, you know?
Like I watched, I mean, this was until I was in like high school, but I was at like a sleepover and watched like Ghost Ship, which is...
Oh, yeah.
But like this is pretty mild in terms of like gore. There's not a lot of gore. It's not super scary. There's no nudity. It doesn't really feel as taboo as maybe some other things they could be watching.
Well, it's from an interesting era where like we don't really see this much anymore, where there were movies made for teens that were rated R. And I think this one mostly got the R rating from language, probably.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of F-bombs in this movie, but otherwise only a couple of really bloody kills, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's definitely some gore. I mean, more than PG-13 level, but yeah, it's not super shocking.
They
Your
could have
basic-
gone a lot farther with the gore, because you see this guy, you know, he drags you behind the crates and hacks you with his hook, and you see him from outside the crates. You know, they really don't want to show the gore in this movie that much. It's there, but if Art the Clown had been involved, you would have seen a lot more with the same story.
Well, yeah, it's certainly not Art the Clown level.
Yeah.
But what is?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Patrick, what's the basic premise?
But anyways, I mean, your basic setup is you've got the Justice League of the 90s, essentially. You have Jennifer Love Hewitt, Sarah Michelle Gellar,
Yeah.
Ryan Phillippe, and Freddie Prinze Jr. I mean, it does not get more 90s, like, heartthrob all-star lineup than that.
Which I
the
was
hottest
surprised-
people on the planet.
Is it Ryan
Basically.
Phillippe? I've always said Ryan Philippe, but I don't know if that's right.
It's Phillippe, and I think we've
Ryan Phillippe.
didn't we watch a Ryan Phillippe movie?
I think
for
we
the
have.
show at some point, and we debated this, but it's Phillippe, or I've heard people say Philippe, but not.
Yeah, I think
Well, I was
I
surprised to
learned
see
that
that.
from this show, from our show at some point.
He was like on his way up. Like he wasn't the star that he became until he did this movie.
This was his breakout role. Yeah.
Which kind of surprised me. But yeah, it's the hottest cast ever assembled. Probably.
Jennifer Love, huge tits, as we used to call her back in the day.
Oh.
Oh no.
Anyways, these four are all high school friends, and they get really wasted one night and happen to hit and kill somebody with their car on the way home, and make the super bright decision of deciding to cover this up so that they can save their promising futures.
Yeah.
But 1 year later, they start receiving threatening messages that say, I know what you did last summer, and find out that somebody, some killer, indeed knows of their sins and is coming after them for it.
Mm-hmm. Pretty simple story.
And I liked, I liked for a slasher, which is not, my favorite genre necessarily, but so often you get these slashers, and we've talked about this a lot of times, but you have slashers where the characters just seem like cannon fodder, and a lot of cannon fodder. They're just four main characters in this, and you have a decent sense, at least, of who each of them is. And I appreciated that.
Yeah.
I did. There's more character development in this, or character work, I should say, than I expected or remembered for a movie of this caliber.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of nice.
It's kind of slow, and that's
Yeah.
I think to its detriment. Ultimately, it seems like nothing happens in this movie for quite some time. But like, other than one kill, which I read was like inserted in post production because they were like, all right, we can't go 45 minutes before we kill somebody. It just really takes its time. You get to know the characters, and for like a whole, I would say at least 45 minutes before anyone notable actually gets killed.
Oh, is the first kill, is that the one that was inserted?
Yeah.
Fucking,
That
what's
guy
his
that
name?
guy was
Max.
the guy from Suicide Kings.
Yeah, Johnny Galecki.
Johnny Galecki.
Yeah.
Oh, looking cute as hell in this movie. I gotta say, I have a weird little crush on him because I grew up with him as the vegan boyfriend on Roseanne.
I grew up with him in
It's nice to
Suicide
see
Kings.
him. Yeah, I know, Chris.
That is so interesting to hear that they inserted that, like, to kind of goose things up a little bit, because after the movie was done, I was like, wait, why was he killed? Like, he had nothing to do with this whole situation.
Yeah.
Well, he was made into kind of a red herring. He's like the first. They suspect him because he drove up after they hit.
Yeah.
What the fuck was his name?
David Egan? Something
David
Egan?
Egan.
David, I think.
a very
he shows
normal
up in-
name, like a name of like a guy you probably know in real life.
Yeah. Yeah, David Egan.
Yeah, this one really hit close home to me. It reminds me of that night I almost hit David Egan with my car. Yeah. Anyway,
A little detail I liked, which I don't usually watch movies with the subtitles on, but I did this time, and I noticed that when they're driving, because they're all out, it starts sort of like Jaws, I guess. They go out to the coast. This takes place in North Carolina. They're having a classic beach coast party with the fire and the making out and the drinking liquor, which I wish I'd never. I mean, we live close enough to the lakes that I would have expected to maybe go to a party like this in my life, but I've never been invited to a party like this. and I would like to go. So if you're having a
As an adult man, you would like to go with teenagers to a party like that.
if you're having a shoreside party with a bonfire and like it's shot day for night, invite me. I want to be there. But anyway,
I always saw the aftermath as a kid. I would like walk the beach because I lived a block away from Lake Erie, and I would see like a bonfire and like beer cans everywhere. I'm like, why am I never here when this is going on? So then I'd walk around at night, and I just never caught it.
So Ryan, they drink, and then Ryan Felipe is too drunk to drive, but. So Freddie Prinze Jr. drives Ryan Felipe's car, and Ryan Felipe is like spilling liquor all over the car, being a hooligan. And the song on the soundtrack, which I would never have recognized, but it was in the subtitles, is by The Offspring, and it's called DUI.
Oh.
And then they hit somebody. They hit a man. And you know what? All right. Let me say something controversial.
Oh boy.
No,
please.
All right. I don't condone it. I don't condone what they did last summer, but I understand it. And I think that's to the movie's credit. I think I might have preferred a movie where they actually did something a little more heinous, but I guess that would make the characters less relatable. We might be like rooting for them to die more, but they do, I think, a pretty good job of making it morally defensible enough that they do what they did.
Do they?
I disagree with that strongly.
Okay, I wholeheartedly disagree.
It's something none of us should ever do in real life. All right, but like, you understand you understand why these kids can make the decision because they hit somebody in the middle of the road. It's a complete accident. But Ryan Felipe,
it's not a complete accident.
It is.
They're wasted.
They're not wasted. Only Ryan Felipe is wasted.
Yeah, Freddie Prinze Jr. is stone sober. He's driving.
Oh,
is he sober?
Yeah, so that's the issue. So that's the problem. He's sober, and Ryan Felipe has like spilled booze all over the car, and they're like,
he drops his bottle down inside onto the driver's seat, so it's all over the
right. And they're like, if we call the cops, Ryan Felipe is going to jail for manslaughter at least, and they're not going to believe he wasn't driving; it's his car. They're never going to believe that Freddie Prinze Jr. was driving. And that he was sober, much less that he was sober. So,
well, I just assumed they were all like at least tipsy because they'd been partying.
No. They're all fine, I think. Except
did you breathalyze Freddie Prinze Jr., Chris? What is
I didn't.
What basis are you making this?
I'll vouch for him too, though.
But Freddie Prinze Jr. is the asshole here because he's the one who has the job of checking for a pulse, and I don't know what credentials he has to do such a thing. But he's the one who determines, oh, this guy's dead. We killed this man. So once you kill this guy. And he's dead. I see how they make the leap of logic where they're like, well, we don't deserve to go to jail for murder, which is what's going to happen because they're going to think we were drinking and driving. So let's just kick him off the cliff. And, he could have just as easily fallen in the ocean. Whatever. Not something you should do. But I thought it was like an interesting presentation of where you can like understand why they did it. But he's actually alive. And that was, I thought a really delightful moment where he like wakes up as soon as they're about to throw him in the ocean. And they're like, well, we've come this far. Let's just throw him in the ocean anyway.
Sure.
That's where it really crosses the line. But if that man had been dead, so this whole movie is Freddie Prinze Jr.'s fault is what I'm trying to say.
Well, yeah. I mean, they even like throw him in the water and like, and this I laughed at because the guy like grabs Sarah Michelle Gellar's like beauty queen crown as he's like going into the lake, and she's like, my crown, and then Freddie Prinze Jr. jumps in after the crown, which I just found hilarious. And then the guy like his eyes pop open again while he's in the water, and Freddie like grabs the crown and he sinks further. And it's just like, no, this is, I don't know. I couldn't make any excuses for any of this behavior. Also, wait,
I actually wrote in my notes, I couldn't believe she was wearing the crown. Like, I wrote, like, she's still wearing the crown at a crime scene, and then it immediately gets snatched off, and I crossed out my note. But so Freddie Prinze Jr., Chris argues, is really the culprit here. He's the villain.
Don't pronounce a man dead unless you're sure.
Well, and also don't, like, take a fucking bottle of liquor and stand up through the fucking sunroof of your friend's...
That's true.
Remember that these are teenagers.
Yeah.
I guess.
I mean, they're in their clearly in their 20s, but like these characters are teenagers, and that character in particular we know has a drinking problem. Like they make several jokes about it to him. So his outrageous behavior is expected to cause trouble.
He's the asshole. He's the biggest asshole of the group for sure.
Oh yeah.
He is, but I think I was texting Steven this, and maybe maybe my moral barometer got messed up, but I actually I thought he was like, this guy is like, I get that he's like the stereotypical asshole character, but he's the one making a lot of sense right now to me.
What do you mean? How so?
Well, through a lot of the movie. Well, because I think he's the one who's most aware of what's going to happen if they call the police and everything like that. And when they're all standing around crying about, oh, we shouldn't do this. He's the one who's like, we got to commit to this now if we're going to commit to it.
But he's being completely selfish because he's only worried about his reputation because he thinks he's going to take the fall.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. What would you do, Steven?
If I was that guy? God, I don't know.
Someone else is driving your car drunk. You're drunk. Murders a guy.
I don't know, because if I'm as drunk as he is in this movie, maybe I would murder a guy. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, listen, obviously, it's hard to say until you're in this situation. No, you should never do what they did in this movie. I think the movie's clear about that. Again, I thought there was enough nuance.
I don't know if it is though. That was kind of one of my issues in the end. Was like, when we get to the end and we get to the killer, even I was like, I suddenly was just thinking, am I really supposed to be rooting against this person? I just had this moment of like, this killer is kind of in the right, sort of, and I can't really defend what these kids did.
No,
the killer's definitely way more wrong than the kids.
I don't know. Well, I mean, also we talked about this before we started recording, but we're going to have an interesting time in the spoiler room because, frankly, I did not understand the whole fucking twist and who the killer was or why they did what they did.
Things are not exactly what they seem in this situation. We find out later. We can't talk about it now, but at face value, I mean, if they didn't push the guy into the fucking ocean, there's no movie. Or it's a very short movie, so they do what they got to do to keep the plot right.
Oh, I'm not saying it shouldn't happen in terms of like it being an interesting story. I think it's just the question of how much you can actually invest in these characters.
I guess it's interesting because it's like I think the artistry of it is that it's like the most horrible thing they could do before you can say these are horrible people.
I just disagree. I do think they're mostly horrible people. The least horrible, okay. I'll say this. I'll say this. I think the least horrible is Jennifer Love Hewitt.
Well, of course.
And she's the least interesting to me.
Well, of course.
Whatever.
Okay.
It's 1997. It's 1997. It's a little morality fable.
What's interesting is it's based on a book, which I think I have not confirmed this, but I think it's more of like a teen. Like a YA book.
Yeah.
They give this out in driver's ed class in the 60s and 70s and 80s.
But yeah, it's based on a book that appears to be a young adult novel, and the author of the book hated the movie. And apparently like the characters, the teens don't die in the book. And they took like a Christopher Pike style thing and made it R-rated, which I find really interesting.
Well, I have some edits I would make to this film we can talk about later.
Okay. For our favorite segment, Chris.
Yeah, let me rewrite this movie later on in the spoiler round.
Are you going to make it about 9/11?
No, not this time.
Okay.
It would be pretty fucked up if this were about 9/11 because it would mean somebody knew. Somebody knew and they did nothing.
Oh, I did like the atmosphere, I guess, of this movie, or sort of the setting. You know, I'm big on like a fishing village setting, especially for a horror movie. You know, it has some Stephen King vibes, and I thought it did a good job of summoning that vibe. Especially like even just I loved how the whole town parade is themed around fish. Like there's fish floats and just everything is sea themed. Right? Yeah, the Croaker Festival.
She's the Croaker Queen.
Uh-huh.
It all felt pretty accurate, just a bit elevated, like a little bit jokey, but not too much. I enjoyed that.
But pretty believable.
Yeah.
And like it made me feel I'm starting to come around on slashers. I think in this movie, revisiting it really made me feel like it captured the essence of those great book covers of like YA horror novels from the 80s and 90s better than almost anything I've ever seen. On top of that, a seaside setting. You guys know I stand that. I love Messiah of Evil. I love Dead and Buried, Midnight Mass. This had just such a cool, it's a fun, spooky vibe to hang out in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like the setting. It's not the best coast, but it's a pretty good one. And I wish that here's my one note on that though. I wish that it had leaned a little more into the goofiness and the fish related paraphernalia, because there are some kills that involve blocks of ice, chests of ice, ropes, fishing line, hooks, and crabs. And that's all great, but I wish they had just kind of run with that gimmick a little bit more and just made it be like everyone who dies is dying in a fishing related way in this film. That would be great. At one point, there's a swordfish on the wall and no one gets impaled on it. And I thought that was a shame.
Missed opportunity. Yeah, but I mean, like, I don't know. Johnny Galecki is fucking boiling lobster or whatever.
That was
when he
good.
Gets killed.
That was good.
They all get killed with a fish hook.
Yeah, that's not enough.
That's
for
pretty
me, though.
fishy.
That's not enough for me.
Doesn't go hard enough for you. Okay, I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
Another thing I liked was the time jump kind of gimmick. It's the Boyhood of horror movies. We get a 1 year later jump pretty soon. It's pretty early in the movie, and then we get another 1 year later late in the movie.
We do,
and I like that you can actually see things having notably changed, especially in the first jump. You know, people have gone to college, and both the couples have broken up. There's completely different vibes, basically, between all four of them than there were last summer. I just liked all the changes that had taken place in that short jump.
That's funny, especially because when you see them all at the beginning, the couples are talking about their big plans, how they're going to stay together through college.
Right.
But
again, Sarah Michelle Gellar lays
relatable.
out the 5-year plan to Freddie Prinze. She's like, I'm going to be on a sitcom and you're going to be the linebacker for the Cowboys or whatever the fuck.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to impregnate me. We're going to have 3 kids. And it's like, girl,
slow down. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think we're supposed to take away that this horrible thing they did last summer has sort of fractured a lot of these relationships. But that's just how life is.
It happens anyway.
It happens anyway. Exactly.
You don't have to kill a guy with your car to, lose touch after high school.
No.
Certainly helps.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's all good. And like I said, just the amount of time that they put into developing this stuff before anybody dies. And like Patrick said, there's no real disposable characters here. So I was actually, as the movie went on, I was like, oh shit. And I'd seen this before, so I knew basically who was going to die, but I was like, oh shit. Like when someone dies, there's going to be some consequence to that because all 4 of these lead actors seem pretty indispensable.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does feel like there's real emotional stakes there. I appreciated that too. And it makes it all the more shocking when someone does die and you wonder, how are we going to go forward? I don't think the movie really takes time to grieve anyone's death, though.
No.
So I'll add that caveat. It really just picks up and moves on immediately.
Mm-hmm. That's true. But I mean, once the top 4 start dying, it's very quick. And then it's the end of the movie pretty quick too.
Well, because it takes so fucking long. It takes like an hour and 10 minutes or something to get there before we see one of the main 4 die.
Which I'm actually kind of
boom, boom, boom.
Which I'm actually kind of okay with because I like, obviously this is a horror movie that's based on the slasher genre. So you're expecting to see somebody slash a bunch of people gorily. But I like that it derives horror and suspense and intrigue from stuff other than just people being killed in gory ways for, as you all have said, like probably a good hour. There's a lot of that going on. I like just the creeping dread of we killed a guy and we're going to be haunted by this shit for the rest of our lives, but are going to try to sweep it under the rug. Like, that's just, I don't know, that's something I would have a nightmare about, having done something like this and just like dealing with the consequences and feeling that guilt hovering around me constantly. And that really intrigued me. And I kind of even enjoyed just watching them start to try and unravel the mystery. I didn't like the mystery itself that much as it went along, but I liked once they start to receive the "I know what you did last summer" notes, them going, all right, shit, what do we do? What can this person's motive be? Should we go to the police? They're probably not going to the police. Oh, we should probably track this guy down on our own. I just kind of liked that. I don't know. It was still, even though it doesn't have the normal slasher movie engine of like people getting killed every 2 seconds, it had other stuff that kept it chugging along and kept me intrigued. Kept the plot momentum going for me.
I would say, so this is actually what I was going to say. I don't think I have to wait to the spoiler room. I'm not really going to spoil anything, but if I were to rewrite the movie, I would just emphasize all that stuff more, because I thought that was way more interesting than it's like, it seems like it's just really chasing Scream, and it's really chasing the tropes of slasher movies from the past, where you have this killer who, for pretty unnecessarily, has this slicker and the hat and the hook and whatever. I think it would be scarier if the threat was just, there's a guy who knows what we did last summer and knows that we're not going to call the cops, and he wants to ruin our life. Yeah. That stuff was all scary. And then when the killer is finally revealed, I thought he was very compelling as a human and not this cloaked person. So I would have liked to see more of like a Cape Fear sort of thing, where he's just kind of antagonizing these kids and trying to ruin their life. And the way he does try to ruin, I didn't think the ways he was trying to ruin his life were very compelling. It was like a good start, but like, you know, he cuts Sarah Michelle Gellar's hair because she's like she's like a beauty queen. And I was like, yeah. I understand that that's consequential for her, but I just didn't feel it compared to like The Invisible Man when she opens up her architecture portfolio and you feel it. You know?
I thought that was a dream at first, her waking up and like tufts of her hair falling out. And then I was like, oh no, wait, the killer really just snuck into her room and like just chopped away at her hair and then left.
Well, we see the killer sneak into the house before that.
Yeah. True.
Yeah. But it seems like he's not there just to, you know, cut some hair.
Yeah.
So,
right.
But that would have been, I think that was the movie was stronger when it was just kind of leaning into like the paranoid stuff and the nightmarish energy like you were describing. And just the slashing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I loved about this the most. Like, it's just a very sort of primal fear. And I feel like it could have just rode on that for a bit longer and had less of the slashing even.
Yeah, I would have loved to see more of that, like anxiety and shame and dread. And, you know, I mean, the series to see about having killed somebody in a drunk driving accident and dealing with it for the rest of your life is Midnight Mass. I mean, I'm going to give I Know What You Did Last Summer a decent review, but go watch Midnight fucking Mass if you haven't already.
I haven't seen Midnight Mass, but I will.
Along the way of like this whole process of the killer like trying to fuck with them or whatever, the thing that flummoxed me the most was when Johnny Galecki's corpse, crab-covered corpse, shows up with a trunk full of crabs in Jennifer Love Hewitt's car and then disappears. Which I was like, is she hallucinating? Was this a dream? Did the killer somehow show up and transport this corpse and a truckload of crabs back out of her trunk before she gets back to it? I have no idea what fucking happened.
He did. No, the killer did put the shit in there and take it out.
Amazing.
Like that, in the text of the movie, that happens. That's also the scene where she screams. It's like a meme. There's like a wide overhead shot of her screaming, like, what are you going to do now? What's the line that she says? You guys know what I'm talking about?
She's like, what are you waiting for?
Yeah, and she says it over and over again. I just learned, and I don't know if this is true, but this comes from the mouth of Jennifer Love Hewitt herself. She said that a kid won a contest to direct a scene in the movie. And that was his idea. And she was like, that's fucking stupid. But then they shot it, and she was like, yeah, I guess it works. And now it's like this iconic moment.
Wait, like including
let that kid direct the whole fucking movie.
Wait, what was his idea? Like just the like...
It was his idea to say that line.
Oh, okay. I
don't know about the crab stuff. I mean, that's like child logic there too. Yeah. So who knows? I need to read more, but I literally just saw an interview with her like right before we started recording, and I'll investigate further and maybe chime in on the Discord. But pretty hilarious.
Wow,
That was an obnoxious plot point. But again, it's like, you know, well, if the
Bizarre
body's
plot
left,
point.
then they got to call the police. And once they call the police, it's all over, basically.
Mhm.
It was just so, it's so ludicrous to imagine. I mean, because like this happens, she stops her car in the middle of a normal residential neighborhood in broad daylight. It's just so funny to imagine the killer jumping out in his
Scooping
car,
up all those crabs.
scooping up all the crabs, scooping up the corpse, and no one noticing. I mean, talk about attracting attention from the cops. It's like, okay,
He's good with
It's
with the
silly.
net, man.
And here's
it's
the thing.
hilarious.
So this was written by Kevin Williamson, who also wrote Scream and many of the Scream sequels. And it's like, I have my issues with how Scream is written, but like this, it seems so intentionally bad and rote. Like actually the movie I thought of watching this was Malignant, because Malignant is like really people who are more talented than it appears, like making a deliberately flat genre horror movie. And that's kind of what's going on here. Like the writer especially, and like, you know, even like Sarah Michelle Gellar, who was doing Buffy the Vampire Slayer at the time, like they know better material than this, but they're just like giving us a straight-faced 1980s style slasher movie, complete with ridiculous tropes and stupid scenes like crabs disappearing from a car. And it's kind of weird, but unlike Malignant, there's no payoff at the end where you're like, oh, all right, well, we're subverting that. It's just very straight all the way through. And it's very kind of weird movie.
Wow, I didn't know that Kevin Williamson created Dawson's Creek as well as the Vampire Diaries.
There's a reference to it in this movie as well.
Yeah.
So they call it like Dawson's Beach, I think.
Right.
Oh yeah,
That's where they have their little party and they talk about the hook. We haven't talked about the hook, like where they're talking about urban legends, which was kind of neat because this does immediately call to mind that like classic campfire story, you know, about the couple on Lover's Lane. But the thing about that story is, and I found a little thing in Stephen King's Dance Macabre about this, where he uses the hook as a way to illustrate like what he believes are the three different kinds of horror, the three different reactions it can elicit, which are terror, horror, and revulsion. Nobody dies in the hook. And this just goes full on, like, people are getting picked off left and right.
Well, depending on the version, and we hear some of those versions in the movie, depending on the version, people die.
But it's interesting how it started as a story of terror, which he defines as a story like The Monkey's Paw, where like the lives of the characters are spared. And in the 90s, it goes on to just straight revulsion, his third category, where like people, we've seen it all. We got to take this to the next level. Urban
legends where it's a close call have always been the spookiest ones to me.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what really gets under my skin too. It's fun if you're like hanging out with, you know, you're having some beers or whatever, and you want to watch a movie like this where like, you know, there's plenty of gore and no lives are spared. But the stuff that really sticks with me is where like they just barely got away with it. And like how does that, you know, haunt you and shape the rest of your life?
My favorite urban legend, because when I was like, I don't know, in 8th grade, all my free time I spent on Snopes.com reading urban legends.
That tracks.
And Snopes at that time was just very committed to urban folklore. It's like a fact checking website, and they've kind of lost their credibility in my mind. It's for various political reasons, but they at the time it was just straight up like collecting these urban legends, and the scariest one was about a guy walking down the street and a blind man coming up to him asking for his help to deliver a letter, and the guy says, okay, I'll help you, and takes the letter, and he's going to go off to the address to deliver it. And then he looks behind him for some reason and sees the man has like thrown down his cane and is like sprinting across the street. And he's like, that's kind of weird. Like, maybe I should like turn this over to the authorities. And so he turns this over to he goes like the police instead, and they go to the house and they find, quote, piles of human flesh labeled for sale. And they open up the letter, and all it says is, this is the last one I'm sending you today.
Ooh.
Kind of dumb, but it scared the shit out of me as like an 8th grader. Like legitimately could not
Tell me that
sleep.
story at 2 a.m. when I'm stoned, and it'll scare the shit out of me like I'm an 8th grader. I love that stuff.
I will.
Oh boy. Well, should we review it?
Yeah.
And then talk about this confusing ass twist. Christopher, would you like to go first?
Not really, because I'm so torn on what to give this
You always
movie.
pick Chris first.
Yeah.
I'll go
do I?
first.
Yeah, Steven can go first.
I'll give it a Q. If you haven't seen it, you probably have, but I'm sure some of you haven't. Like, it's a little slow in places. This is a pretty fun movie, and it's got a good vibe. It's got that kind of seaside thing going on we were talking about. It's got pretty, likable characters that are their motivations are a little bit more fleshed out than you're used to in your average, say, 80s slasher movie, which this is kind of playing with the tropes of a little bit. And yeah, it's a good time. It's not serious. It's not really going to stick with you or keep you up late at night. But it's maybe a good party movie, and definitely something that like people still talk about. So if you want to be able to participate in the conversation about it, if you want to be able to talk about Sarah Michelle Gellar's hair and her hat, her crown, you got to see it. It's a stone cold cue it.
All right,
Chris, if you're not ready,
No,
you ready? All right.
Yeah, I think I have to give it a screw it. It's right on the line for me, but I just think this is a very uninteresting movie. There's like nothing. There was nothing for me other than sort of the setting. There was nothing really for me to sink my teeth into on this one. It's just very rote, maybe deliberately so, but just nothing turns the dial. If you know the premise of the movie, you know everything you need to know to participate in the pop culture conversation. I haven't seen any notable memes about Sarah Michelle Gellar's crown or anything like that.
Oh my god! Or the hat. The hat is something else.
Just didn't do a lot for me, and there's just so much stuff out there that is interesting. I feel like it's hard to justify spending your time on this unless you're just interested in the time capsule aspect of it, because I think it is historically significant, and it was like sort of the first movie that, it's like the Scream came out, but that doesn't necessarily make a slasher resurgence. This is the movie that comes out and does well, where everyone's like, all right, we're going to make 30 of these movies in the next 5 years.
That's true.
So it's kind of interesting for that, just to see what like a 90s slasher, it's really the epitome of a 90s slasher movie, much more so than Scream, I think. So you can watch that for that reason, but that's the only reason. Screw it. Patrick.
I'll give it a Q it too. I enjoyed it. It's not a perfect film by any means, but I enjoyed it for a lot of reasons that I've discussed already. Definitely time capsule factor for sure. I don't know. I'd been curious about it for a long time. I frankly knew nothing about the premise other than what the title implies. I didn't know what they did last summer. So
Oh, wow.
it was it was interesting to finally have this cultural experience that I missed as a sheltered child in the 90s. So I enjoyed it. Well, we are going to go down to the spoiler room and talk about who's under that raincoat, who's been doing all these killings, and what's up with Sarah Michelle Gellar's hat. We might even talk about that too. But before we go down there, I will remind you, as always, to check out our website, everyhorrormovieonnetflix.com. We've got our list of every movie that we've ever reviewed out there, or at least a lot of them. Chris has made a New Year's resolution of catching up on that list and fixing the website, so soon enough it'll be up to snuff. We've also got a merch store out there where you can get t-shirts and other paraphernalia with every horror movie on Netflix art on them. Also follow our social media. We're at AMONcast, EHMONcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And while you're at it, head to your podcast provider of choice. Leave us a review, leave us a subscribe, tell your friends about us. It's good. The ratings, the reviews, they help people find the show, and the word of mouth helps as well. All right, you guys ready to go down to what do they call that on you ready to go below decks, to the spoiler below decks? Is that what they call it on a ship, below deck?
No, that was a miss. Yeah, you're close, but not quite.
Well,
these ships.
Enlighten me, Titanic boy.
I would call it maybe the hold is what you're thinking of.
The hold. Below decks is an expression, though. I'm going to look it up on the way down there.
You go below decks, but when you go below deck, but when you're there, you're in the hold.
Well, we're going below deck to the spoiler hold.
All right, I'm gonna go with the head.
All right.
And,
We'll see you there.
Finally got it.
All right, we are below decks in the spoiler hold. Below decks is, I think that's going to be my cup of old lang syne. No one let me forget. Everyone remember what I did last episode. But we're here to spoil everything about. I'm literally Googling this right now. Why did I think below decks? Where did I get decks from specifically? I mean, below deck is an expression. I don't know where I got.
I never heard
plural
decks plural. That's weird.
That is weird.
Yeah.
I don't know where I came up with that.
The ship has one deck.
Yeah. Well, anyways, we're down here to spoil everything about I Know What You Did Last Summer. So someone please spoil this for me, because I don't know what the... All right, so here, we learned that the guy that they killed was named David Egan. He himself was in a car accident a few years ago with a woman named Susie. Susie's her name.
Susie. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Susie died. David lived. And
Couldn't live with the guilt. Couldn't fucking live with the guilt.
which we learned from. Wait, who's Missy? What's Missy's relationship to all this again? I forget.
Sister of the dead man, Egan. David Egan's sister is Missy Ann Hesh.
Oh, right. Yes.
Who lives how would you describe? She lives a jumbo lifestyle, or no? What am I thinking of?
Jumbo?
A gumbo lifestyle.
She's very waif-like, and she kind of lives.
Wait, what does
in a
that
home
mean?
alone.
Even what is
The
a gumbo?
the gumbo lifestyle, right? She's like always doing like a seafood meal, and
She's hanging out with them crawdads.
She's always like smoking a crawdad.
Oh, okay.
Wielding a knife threateningly when she doesn't mean to be threatening.
Yeah. I wasn't afraid of her for a minute because Anne Hesh not an intimidating character really in this movie anyway.
Oh, I found her not intimidating, but she had seen some shit. She was a wild card.
Yeah, she's grieving. So here's what I think happened. Susie dies in the accident when David Egan is driving. David Egan, we see him at the beginning of the movie in that ridiculous and famous helicopter shot that's over the opening titles, where the helicopter goes over the whole ass ocean. Like it starts in fucking Morocco and goes over the whole ass ocean to North Carolina, and then it goes up the cliff, and you see this man sitting there in a pretty close shot for a helicopter shot of this guy looking at his locket, and
getting drunk, looking at the fireworks on 4th of July.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and I guess David Egan is actually murdered, thrown into the sea by Susie's dad.
Yes,
who blames him for the accident and knows that he goes there on the anniversary of her death
and then they hit him with the car.
Right. So
he survives.
Exactly. So he kills David Egan, and then he walks across, he's going back, and he gets hit by the car by our teenagers. So the person we've killed is not innocent David Egan, but was in fact a killer even before they hit him with the car and killed the real David Egan. And then, I mean, it was the same night. So when they see the news reports, they assume they killed David Egan. But
does it look like the same guy? I mean, you see his face in a close-up in the water when like they're doing the crown thing.
He's so mutilated, and they don't know what David Egan looks like. They don't know who the guy is.
Yeah.
No, but I'm talking more about from the audience perspective, because I guess you don't see David very well in the opening shot. I watched this in 2 chunks, so I didn't even remember what the guy underwater, like in the close-up with the crown thing, looked like.
Well, and they wouldn't know.
It works. And also, like, I think the locket he had is like on the side of the road, because you see him like looking at the locket, and then you see the locket go down with the guy, and you're like, well, it's got to be the same guy. Well, no. How could we have known that a third party had come in and killed him and then taken the locket in the interim? So, I mean, as far as twists go, pretty clever twists. There's also a little bit of a stupid misdirection where David Egan has a friend named Billy Blue.
That was weird.
That was bullshit. That was pure nonsense.
Yeah.
So that
boat in the
at the end of the movie, Jennifer Love Hewitt can see that Freddie Prinze Jr.'s boat is named Billy Blue, and so it's played.
Oh,
like,
is that
he's
Freddy's
been
boat?
the killer the whole time?
Oh no, you mean
Yeah.
Ryan Phillippe?
No, Freddy's boat.
No, Freddy.
Oh, that's right. I mixed those two up. Yeah. All right. Yeah, they
Yeah.
look like the same. I mean, actually, they don't at all. But I don't know.
They
They're just
don't
like
at all,
generic. They're just like generic looking, like heartthrob boys.
I don't think Freddie Prinze Jr. is very attractive, but what do you guys say?
I find him very attractive. Well, I did at a time. Like, this movie was, I have to imagine it was very sexually confusing for me because I didn't know I was gay. And again, these are like the 4 hottest young people on the planet.
Yeah.
It's like a buffet of sexuality in this. And I was very much, I didn't know, like, do I like Ryan Phillippe? Do I like Freddie Prinze? Maybe it's okay to like both.
All right. Well, is this the movie where Freddie Prinze Jr. and Sarah Michelle Gellar met and fell in love?
Yes.
That's cute.
They're still married, aren't they?
Oh yeah, they're together forever.
They're in like Lifetime movies together or something. That's like the funny thing about this is like none of these people have really, their careers haven't really lasted because they were hired because they were hot.
Well, yeah, I was wondering about that. I was thinking about Sarah Michelle Gellar. I was like, does she even do movies anymore? I don't know.
She's like the queen of Lifetime. I feel like How
Oh.
Did This Get Made has done like 3 or 4 of her Lifetime Christmas movies at this point.
They've all had it's fun. They've all had career. They've all made careers out of being hot even into their adult life.
Yeah.
I think Ryan Felipe is like playing hot dads and Bob Lee Swagger on USA, and Jennifer Love Hewitt had that show or that series or that movie about being a hooker.
Yeah. God, the only thing this movie is missing is Devon Sawa.
Dude, Jennifer,
Yeah,
Sarah Michelle Gellar had 2 roles in 2022, one of them in Clerks 3, but they were her first film role since 2009, or at least according to Wikipedia.
Oh, no shit. Maybe I'm mixing her up with Melissa Joan Hart.
Oh
Sorry,
yeah,
guys.
yeah. She's
All
queen
these
of,
fucking
Hallmark.
3 name women from the 90s. You got your Sarah Michelle Gellar, Melissa Joan Hart, Jennifer Love Hewitt, Mary Kate Olsen.
Who was a legitimate child at the time this movie came out.
Anyway.
Wow. Wowee. Okay.
Anyway, yeah, so the actual killer, he's revealed, and this is what, and I thought, first of all, and I had this thought the first time I watched this movie a few years ago, he dressed like Ernest P. Worrell.
Oh my God. Yes. I wrote down, this is my favorite Ernest movie.
It's distracting. It's a little distracting.
At first, my first thought when we see his face is, holy shit, is Dennis Hopper in this movie? And then immediately I realized it wasn't. Clocked his outfit and thought, it's Ernest.
I wish I'm not going to attempt,
which is a great name.
I'm not going to attempt Ernest impression because I don't think I can pull it off. But the thought is the thought that counts, and you guys are welcome to try if you want.
I've never heard anyone attempt an Ernest impression. He's got such a unique vibe. I don't know how you'd pull that off.
It's hard. I think I could get 80% of the way there, but not enough to go public with it. Anyway, yeah. So, but I thought he was scary. He's scary without the slicker and the hat as just this normal ass man. I thought he projected way more menace on that boat at the end than he did.
Well, he's like Robert De Niro in Cape Fear. Like,
yeah,
he's got
exactly.
kind of a similar sort of. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, where was this guy all movie? This would have been so fun if it was just this guy like pulling up his car like Robert De Niro and talking shit to these kids, and you know, and then you like they could be like, all right, enough is enough. We have to go to the cops. And then like she sees him at the parade, and he's like laughing his ass off, slapping the back of the sheriff. That would be great.
Or he's riding under the parade float the whole time and pops up at the end to kill her.
Yeah, I didn't.
I don't know if that's the vibe, but
Yeah.
Well, that's just another fun thing from Cape Fear that Robert De Niro
oh,
does.
is it? Shit, I'm sorry. I didn't catch that. My bad.
Yeah, there's a scene where he's like I can't even say it. It's just so ridiculous. The Simpsons parodied it, but Robert De Niro is like riding under what's her name? Who's the actress in Kate?
Juliette Lewis.
Yeah, Juliette Lewis. He's like clung under like the body of her car for a length of time, and
I do not remember
I've actually
that.
only
No.
seen. I've only seen about a half hour of the Scorsese Cape Fear. I've saw the original with Gregory Peck, and that's a masterpiece.
that's Cape Fear, folks.
Yeah, I didn't need the masked man. I mean, it's not even a masked man, but mystery man, hooded killer kind of
Hat man.
bullshit. Didn't need that. Yeah.
Hat Man Crothers.
Yeah.
Well, and it's okay. So it's a fishing town. So there's a shitload of people wearing these slickers.
I
Which
thought
I'm like,
that was funny.
It was funny. It was funny. Like I feel like that's like one of Kevin Williamson's few little like tricks up his sleeve in what is otherwise a pretty rote movie. Where like I think that's supposed to be kind of campy.
Well, but that's
Yeah, and-
such a
and
common trope. I mean, he does that in Scream all the fucking time. Like you even get that in Halloween where somebody will be wearing the fucking coveralls. I don't know. That
that's
just
true.
seems tropey. That just seems par for the course for this sort of thing to me.
I thought it was a little wink in this movie though, because we get the scene where Ryan Phillippe thinks he sees the killer, chases him down, tackles the fuck out of him, and it's like an old guy having a
Fucking the
panic
poor
attack
man's
as he
Max
swings
von
him around.
Sydow.
But yeah, it's no more winky than it is in Halloween or any of his other movies.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's true.
I'm actually I agree with Patrick. Point to Patrick because I was thinking the same thing that like I really got a kick out of this. And because when she's like, oh, he's wearing a slicker, I'm like, everyone in this town's wearing a slicker. And then like Freddie Prinze says it, he's like, everyone's wearing a slicker in this city. That doesn't narrow it down. But yeah, it's nothing new. So
Yeah.
can't give the movie credit for that,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Oh well.
Nothing
Anyway,
new. It's weird that like the common story about this movie I learned today is untrue. That this was a film Kevin Williamson had written before Scream. Scream took off, and then he was able to sell it. Not true. That was a different script. That was Teaching Mrs. Tingle or Killing Mrs. Tingle, as it was originally called. So it's like baffling to me that he wrote this after Scream, like really putting his reputation on the line. Basically undoing everything that he had done with Scream, with a movie that is like completely not self-aware as far as it comes to dealing with horror tropes.
mm-hmm.
It's a big miss on that level.
Well,
Anyway,
so a final battle ensues. Sarah Michelle Gellar and Ryan Felipe have been killed horrendously, and so has Sarah Michelle Gellar's sister, who works at the family department store with her, and a few other people who got in the way. Yeah, a few other people who were in the wrong place at the wrong time, like a local cop, etc. This guy's kind of just killing everybody at this point. Jennifer Love Hewitt and Freddie Prinze Jr. end up on a boat. Freddie Prinze Jr. gets thrown off the boat pretty early on and
becomes Wet Freddy.
becomes Wet Freddy.
All right.
And then in the time it takes him to climb back up the net and get back on the boat, Jennifer Love Hewitt has been chasing this guy.
Wait, so Freddy just identified himself as Billy Blue, like to cover his tracks. Like he was just like, I'll just say my name is the same as my boat because no one's ever seen the name of my boat, and we'll draw a connection between these two things in this small fishing town.
Because this was this was years ago, and Hesh lives out in the sticks, so he went out and visited her because he felt bad about killing the guy
Years ago,
and said, "Oh, my name's Billy Blue." Yeah, well, it was like the same summer, I think.
So months ago.
It was like the same.
So last summer.
like one year ago.
Okay, yeah, all right.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, kind of a pointless red herring. Best part of this sequence is when she's in the hold, and I didn't think the ice looked very realistic.
I was going to bring that up. I was like, was that supposed to be
It was
ice? 'Cause
actually-
that was plastic as fuck.
I read this today. It was gelatin.
Oh.
Oh wow, it didn't look right. They should have used anything else, plastic or dare I say it, real ice.
Well, they were interested in her comfort, I think. So it's nice they didn't use real ice.
Anyway, everyone who's been killed in the whole movie, the corpse is in the ice, and she's uncovering them one after another. Like, what's the other movie that does this? I've seen this before.
In ice specifically?
not in ice, but in like sand, or like it's the end of the movie and like, oh, here's everybody that's been killed the whole movie. Here's where all the bodies are.
Oh, I feel like that's a billion slashers. That's such a trope, and I can't name one of them. God damn it!
Yeah, it's a little
It's definitely
frustrating.
a thing. Yeah, it's definitely a thing where the bodies start falling out. It reminds me a little bit of like Poltergeist with the skeletons in the pool.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway,
It's a good little bit.
And I think this is the first. I think this is the first time she realizes that like all her friends are dead, which was kind of sad. But she's too scared to do anything about it. Freddie Prinze Jr. eventually climbs back up the net.
Is it?
And he.
I mean, oh wait, she didn't see Ryan get killed, but I mean, she saw
Right, because
Johnny Galecki in the back of her trunk.
sure, right, yeah. But she didn't see Sarah Michelle Gellar or Ryan die.
Yeah. Fair.
Anyway, Freddie Prinze Jr. Joins the fight, and they are able to get our killer caught in a line, and they on a motorized reel, and he ends up getting carried up, and his hand is cut off, like Avatar: The Way of Water. And then he's flung out on the boom arm of the ship and cast off into the water, and this time he's got to be dead, right?
yeah, of course.
But
It's not like this is the exact same circumstance he was left in a year ago that he survived.
Well, so then Jennifer Love Hewitt's back in college,
Yep.
and
I like this part. This is good. This is right up my alley.
okay. Well, I have something interesting to note about this.
I also read it too,
happens.
but I read that too. Go ahead.
Okay. So she gets a note that looks ominously like the note that kicks things off in the beginning of the film. It turns out she's being invited to a pool party. She goes to take a shower. She sees "I still know" kind of painted with the finger on the whatever, the condensation of the glass, and a figure, assuming it's the rain slicker killer, jumps forward through the glass, cut to black. Turns out that is completely ignored in the sequel, even though it follows that character.
Oh, so we do away with Ben Willis or whatever his name is entirely, and I Still Know What You Did Last Summer.
Oh, he's got to come back, right?
Or wait, what are you?
I think he's in it.
What do you mean by? Oh, you mean it doesn't pick up on her being attacked in the shower?
Right.
Yeah, it's like that never happened, but she has, like, early in the second movie, she's like in class and has a dream that she's encountered the killer again.
Oh.
But like at the end of this movie, I assume the killer got her.
Yeah.
Like, she's in a fucking towel alone in a shower. He's jumping through the glass. She's
It's
dead,
a nightmare.
right?
It's a nightmare. She didn't actually get invited to a pool party.
Well, it's a totally different thing in the sequel, though, too. It's like a different nightmare.
Well,
So,
she's having a lot of nightmares about this. I don't know. I like that I'm explaining the sequel to you, having never seen the sequel.
I've never seen the sequel.
Only having read the first paragraph of the Wikipedia plot summary for it to see how they wrote their way out of that.
You just really understand Jennifer Love Hewitt's character very well after watching this.
I do.
Yeah.
Well, that's the movie.
Now we know what they did last summer.
We still don't know what we did last summer, but that's, neither here nor there.
And we'll still know what they did last summer. In fact, we'll always know what they did. I also love sequels that have unusual, like, naming conventions instead of just like, I know what you did last summer too. I love that the sequels are, I still know what you did last summer, and I'll always know what you did last summer.
Or my favorite is Sometimes They Come Back, and then the sequel is Sometimes They Come Back Again, and then I think the third one is Sometimes They Come Back for More.
That's great. Well, I think this is prime for a reboot. I think there's enough here that it could be done again. And if I
shocking that there hasn't been one.
series.
Oh, that's right.
There's
Which
a
I think
TV
is
series
supposed to be good-ish. Maybe I've heard.
And it's probably produced by Blumhouse. Just gonna go out on a limb. I can see Blumhouse really making some trash out of this.
Maybe we'll get
trying their best.
Maybe we'll get I Forgot What You Did Last Summer.
Oh, amnesiac Ben Willis.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like Jennifer Love Hewitt, and she's like 65, and like Alzheimer's is starting to hit, and she's forgetting everything that ever happened to her, including this pivotal moment in her life. It stars Julianne Moore, actually. Now that I'm thinking of it. That's what I want.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll get that someday.
Ben Willis is not in I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer, but he is in I Still Know What You Did Last Summer.
Good. Yeah,
Wait,
I'll always know.
So that's the third one?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was like straight to video and made like 20 years after the fact. Like it's a cash in.
Well, this was a cash in to begin with. I mean, what are we talking about here?
This one has artistic integrity.
This movie was made, like, from my understanding, this movie was made so that the studio could say, from the creators of Scream, or from the creators of Scream. And then Wes Craven sued because he didn't write Scream, but he directed it, and he didn't like that somebody else was taking credit for his success. And it sounds like it was a whole mess. It probably continues to be so.
Blumhouse was not involved in the I Know What You Did Last Summer series, which is frankly shocking.
Was it the CW?
Amazon.
Oh.
Prime.
I'm going to have to listen to the trailer for this movie just to hear that 90s trailer guy talk about this.
Hell yeah.
It's a good trailer.
What you did last summer. I can hear it in my head.
I want it to be John Larroquette, though.
Yeah.
He got paid in weed for that.
Yeah.
All right, well, I want to know what we're going to do next episode, and Steven is going to tell us.
All right, next episode, we are going to watch the 2018 end film. I feel like that's early for an end film, at least for a horror end film, called The Open House. Following a tragedy, a mother and her teen son move to a relative's vacant vacation home where eerie and unexplained forces conspire against them.
I bet there's going to be escrow in that one.
I hope so.
Oh, it stars...
Our fans love it.
Chris, it stars Chicken Shit Clay.
Oh, no!
Who's Chicken Shit Clay?
That's the real
star
nightmare.
of Chris's favorite end series, 13 Reasons Why. Dylan Minnette.
Yeah, I watched 13 Reasons Why season 1 in about 2018, and this is at the height of his popularity. And
yeah, so this movie was definitely made by an algorithm.
And it held my attention. I gave that show my full attention, and it had its highs and it had its lows. But the one thing that just Clay, I can't, don't even get me started. There were so many decisions he should have made, he didn't make.
We'll get you started in 2 weeks, baby. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Chris has explained, I'm pretty sure, the entire plot of this show to me via like text or IM at some point back in the day, and he would always call Clay Chicken Shit Clay.
Chicken Shit Clay just has one job. He has one job, and it's to listen to these damn tapes and then make a decision. And instead, he listens to like half a tape at a time and then goes off around town starting shit. And every time he starts shit, someone's like, you need to listen to the tapes, Clay. And it's a knockout blow. He can't come back to them after that because he doesn't know what's on the tapes. So he won't just go home and listen to the goddamn tapes.
This sounds like me trying to watch every horror movie on Netflix.
Yeah.
I think
like halfway through, I gotta take a break. I have opinions.
I think
exactly.
Instead of watching, reviewing, and discussing The Open House next episode, we should just let Chris like tell the entire story of 13 Reasons Why to us.
That's probably what it's going to devolve into.
Every time he fucking leaves the house, he gets into hilarious. He gets peer pressured into like rock climbing with no rope. And it's like, how did we end up in this situation? And
What the fuck
then
is
he's
this
like,
show about? Like,
It's
I
about
thought I
a-
knew, but apparently it's...
it's about glorifying teen suicide. But it's okay because they filmed a 20-second clip that runs at the beginning of every episode with the cast. That's like, if you're thinking of suicide, please don't.
Oh man. Well,
Sounds a little like my line of work anyway.
Because I know, I don't know if this is staying in the episode or coming out, but because I work in education, and all the superintendents put out a letter that was like, this is a serious show that glorifies suicide. And I was like, I me being like the artist minded person, I'm like, oh, it can't be glorifying suicide that bad. And I watched this show with a very skeptical lens. I'm like, no, this show is like the coolest thing you can do is kill yourself.
Oh my God.
As a teenager. So what a mess.
Well, next episode we'll be discussing The Open House and probably 13 Reasons Why a little bit as well. Looking forward to it. In the meantime, Go to the website, everyhorrormovieonnetflix.com. Go to the social media, AMONcast, EHMONcast, and leave us a review on your podcast provider of choice.
Go to our fabulous Discord, which we'll link to in the show notes. And if you want to read along to Stephen Graham Jones's novel from last year, My Heart is a Chainsaw, with me and a few other fine folks, we'd love to have you in the discussion.
Hell yeah. All right, should we get out of here, guys?
Yeah, man, let's get out of here.
Yeah, let's jump ship.
All right, for every horror movie on Netflix, I'm Patrick.
I'm Chris.
I'm Steven.
And we will see you next summer.